The biggest problem with these things is when they don't work and it's your last pod. Hi there, my name is Charles Ray Dawson. This is the Unnamed Real Estate Podcast, episode 183. I am the residential sales manager and associate broker at ProStar Realty, and I hope you guys are all having a really great day. Because it is Thursday, I want to say the 8th? Yeah, Thursday the 8th, and it's been a busy week here. We've been kicking off our training on Monday. We had the agents come in and we went over all the new docs that they've created for us. So we can say we trained our agents appropriately. Now, whether or not they were paying attention is outside of my control, but you gotta try. And, some people were not available to show up because we held it during the day, and some people have day jobs or couldn't get into town or whatever. So what we did is we recorded the whole thing on the Zoom call, and they are supposed to be reviewing the video we put together with the Zoom call, and so they can say that they completed their training. Afterwards, they were supposed to text Ray a secret code that's released at the last 5 minutes or so, maybe 10 minutes, guys. You might as well watch the whole video to let me or Steve know that you actually completed it. Well, as of, what time is it right now? 12 o'clock. On Thursday, I have received 0 texts from the people who were supposed to watch that. And I think when we looked at the video itself, which we have private on YouTube, the total amount of viewings was 2, me and Jessica, making sure that it went out properly. So, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him think. But what we wound up doing on that, which is actually sort of funny, is so we kick off the Zoom call, yada, da, 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 da. Jess gets to get all going. I go into my song and dance routine. Got some really great feedback. We're having the conversation, including how did we get here? Why are we here? What the hell? This is stupid. Watching the agents work through the levels of grief was just amazing. And also really good insight to which one of them had been paying attention. Then Jessica gets back from her food run, so we've got sandwiches and everything ready to go for our agents. And then she suddenly realized she never pressed record on the Zoom call. So our Zoom call just picks up recording at that point. Now, the problem is, it was sort of nice because we'd just gotten done with the first document, right, the buyer-broker agreement. And what we did is I recorded myself explaining the buyer-broker agreement to the agents after the class, so I got to do it twice, and in doing so was able to come up with about 10-12 minutes. And so I'm actually going to tack that on the end of this video. Don't expect you guys to watch it. You can if you want. I think it's pretty good, but you never know. Big thing along those lines is, it's for some of you guys, it'll be information. All right. And hey, if you record something, don't let it go to waste. Now, unlike our internal Zoom call video, I feel incredibly comfortable releasing this out to the public. Our internal Zoom call that we had, Zoom call, there was some pushback on some of the new changes that weren't too flattering for real estate in general. So that's, it's basically, this is us talking about clients. You don't want to know what we talk about our clients and what we say about you guys, right? Well, not my clients. I love you all. Right, but those other agents, they don't think very much of you some days. So let's look at the numbers because we got something really interesting kicking off on this. Okay. This was numbers from August 7th, 2024. Actives this week are 17,450, down 166. Our new listings were 1,811, up 178. Contracts this week were 1,899, down 126. Our closings for last week were 1,484, and coming soon to an MLS near you is 529 new listings. Now, why I said this was interesting is not only do we have our active listings going down, but our supply here has changed to 74. And with the contracts reducing, our demand actually went down a little bit to 73.7. But because supply went down more than demand, All right. We actually moved up. You guys might remember that was 99.4 last week. Now we're up to 99.6. Don't expect this to mean much. It might just be a statistical blip. But if you look at what's been going on our weekly thing, and when I look at my Excel spreadsheets, you can almost see, the actives have been bouncing and our contracts be bouncing, and we might have hit peak at this point, and we might be reversing. And you can see that when we go to the cities and areas, all right, where we used to have just 2 places on here that were still gaining. Now we have a total of 5. And look at Maricopa and Buckeye. Have they bottomed? All right. So Buckeye is now at 62.5, which is up 1% from last month. All right. And Maricopa is at 70.5, which is up 5% from last month. So apparently somebody's listening to me, and the bargain shoppers are going to Maricopa and Buckeye, and they're starting to pick up those deals. All right. Another gainer was Cave Creek, all right, and Scottsdale. And then Fountain Hills is starting to trend up while they're still leading the pack, all right. They're at 168.5. Everybody else is in decline, all right. Our 2 balanced markets that we have right now are Tempe and Peoria. Tempe has dropped 21%. All right. So they have, in the last month, they have gone from a seller's market into a balanced market. Right, and Peoria is, still trending down, but they're still in that balanced market, right? And of course, Paradise Valley that nobody cares about, right? So this is interesting. We had some interest rate flux going on last week, all right? This was before Japan decided to do Japanese thing and blow up our market on us, and that was not as much of an impact as we thought it was going to be. Generally, when you see the stock market perform poorly and you move into a bear market, you have this flight of money to bonds, and everybody moves their money over into the bonds market, right? Which has the effect of driving down the returns on bonds, which has the effect of driving down interest rates for home buyers, right? We didn't see that happen. In fact, on Monday and Tuesday, they actually went up a little bit. But now, it is... Funny thing is, this happened about a week and a half after the Fed said, now we're not going to do a rate cut. We're going to kick it until September. Then we got the employment numbers. Then we got the manufacturing numbers. And then Japan did something really squirrely, and they actually started reducing their crazy lending rates over there. And they bumped everything up. The yen got a little bit stronger, and that tipped over a whole bunch of investors' apple carts. Now, this conversation is way the hell outside of my scope, all right? And I have watched a couple really good videos, so I have a loose understanding of how this thing worked out. But effectively what people were doing is they were going to Japan, borrowing yen at their interest rates. They were converting it to U.S. dollars and then buying U.S. assets, all right? And the people who thought they were smart were doing something called buying it on margin, which means they didn't have to put the whole amount down. All right, so if you borrow $1,000 in yen, you bring it over here, you might be able to get $2,000 worth of assets for your $1,000 that you borrowed in Japan. And that works really good as long as the yen keeps falling, because every month you owe effectively less and less to pay that off, because the value of the yen is less. Well, the yen suddenly starts getting worth more, then all of a sudden you owe more, which means your rate of return that you have finally crafted out on your purchase of assets here suddenly starts not looking so good. And that started some people to just say, okay, I'm out, boom. And that started other people going, oh crap, now the value of the assets that I borrowed money to purchase is now worth less, and now I need to pay back more, oops, and so on and so forth. And then there's this thing called a margin call, right? That's where all hell breaks loose. So, but here on Thursday, at least last time I noticed, we seemed to recover to the whole crazy, but we were really, really expecting to see some sort of interest rate change during all that. So we are, the current Fed rate in September, everybody said is already being priced into the cake, so we'll see what happens with that. People are expecting to see interest rates go down. Because they are expecting to see interest rates go down, I wonder, just hear me out here. All right. Don't take this the wrong way, but human beings are lemmings. All right. They will sit there and go, I don't want to buy until everybody else buys. I don't want to buy until the interest rate hits 6. All right, you and everybody else. So everybody waits until the interest rates get 6, and then everybody shows up to buy. All right, so your nice, purchase of your home, let's say in Goodyear, all right, which is right now a buyer's market. All right, instead of buying that house in Goodyear today at today's interest rate, and then in 6 months refinancing into a lower interest rate, and there are lenders out there who will do that for free. You wait until you see the number you want up front, and then you buy along with the 17 other people you're standing in line to see the house. All right. So, but let's look at this. Fountain Hills, bouncing back. Scottsdale, bouncing back. Is that people getting their houses now before it gets really, really serious? Are those the people in Fountain Hills, the people in Scottsdale, right? Are these ones buying in knowing I got to get in before the rush, even though Fountain Hills is still the seller's market and probably will be for quite some time? Right? Might be a good time to look into Chandler. All right. What does Fountain Hills and Scottsdale have in common? A lot of people with education. All right. So these guys may not be following the herd. All right. So what does that mean? I don't work those two areas. So what I'm going to be doing here in the next couple weeks or so is I think I'm going to wind up having to do a video explaining every one of these new documents and stuff, and I will explain them in such ways of explaining them to you, the consumer. Hopefully when I'm all done with this, I have a nice little volume of work, all right, that I can use for marketing anyhow. Unfortunately, what this means to you is a whole bunch of Ray explaining documents to you with some news on the side. Oh, speaking of news on the side, right before we wrap this up, good friends over to the Crime Fruit Report. Guy who runs Crime Fruit Report is actually in England, and I found out today that he is from County Durham, which is where my family's from, which is really sort of cool. And one of my podcast hosts that I listen to, he turns out he's from County Durham too. So I don't know if everybody from that part of England is just like of like minds and stuff, but it really warms the cockles of my heart. Let me tell you what. So he's sitting there in England because he lives in England in the summer. And so he was just letting you know how things happen in England. You guys remember I've discussed this before, but he's got some really cool hard numbers. Now that buyers agents are no longer getting paid by the listing agent, how do they do it in England where they don't have that situation and never have? Well, this is how they do it. Most buyers do not use real estate agents. All right. And the other thing that's really interesting is England. Not only do most buyers not use real estate agents, but England is very much buyer beware. All right, you're responsible for your home inspection. All right, the seller does not have to disclose anything to you. That's your fault. That's your problem. You find it out. All right, and they also don't have anybody to help negotiate with them. So they just go out there and do their thing. I want this house. Okay, well, yeah, that'd be grand, lad. I don't know why you just broke into an Irish accent there, but. So you just go out there and buy a house from some guy who's going to be representing the seller, who's going to sell the house, and he's going to negotiate for the seller. So basically, you're coming to me without an agent, all right, and I'm going to sell you this house. So what do I have to say to get you to drive this house off the lot? So, and that's the way they do it in England. Now, once again, at a certain price point, people start hiring real estate agents because they start realizing the importance of having an agent negotiate for them and to do the scout work and to do the research and to coordinate the home inspections, right? So same thing, all right? Think about it. It's almost the same thing. The Fountain Hills and Scottsdale people suddenly realize, I don't have time for this. I'm an attorney. I'm a doctor. I have what we call $1,000 an hour hours. Right? It is worth it to me to hire somebody to do that work for me. So they hire on buyer's agents. And what do buyer agents get paid? He is actually talking to a Henry Pryor and Company, which is a company that sells real estate in County Durham. All right. And their website states that they offer the following options. Okay. A pocket agent service is a one-time charge of £1,000, which turns out to $1,280, okay, for a consulting fee. All right, this is for a response to questions and advice how to negotiate with the sellers. No active search is conducted. Now, also in England, you remember they have a what's it called, value added tax, as I've called a VAT tax of 20%. So that's $1,280 plus 20%. Figure that out, and that's basically for a consultation. You, me, sit down for an hour or two. I'm going to explain the process to you, give you advice on how to negotiate. I'm not going to look for any houses, and I'm not going to go with you and open up any doors and walk through the house and point out the crack in the ceiling or anything like that. Those little funny tubes that you see, those little dirt marks on the ceiling, yeah, those are termites. You're not going to get that. But for sitting down and talking to me, you're going to pay me over $1,300. Anybody who needs consulting service for anything in life, I can call Ray Dawson Consultants and Associates. I'd be happy to talk to you for $1,300. Call now. So, second one they do is what they call a buying service, right? And they do £600 per week, pay as you go for as long as it takes. £600 a week. All right, average. I'm thinking back to my clients that I literally showed like 50 houses to. I'm thinking back to my clients that I wrote like 11 or 12 offers on, and it took us months. I'm thinking back clients who went like 5 or 6 months and eventually never found a house that they wanted, and they had to renew their lease. They're paying me $600 a week, and I can handle two. That's $1,200 a week, right? That's $4,800 a month, thereabouts. Yeah, I could do that. Okay, so once again, you got my number. Just give me a call. And the third one is a fixed upfront fee of £14,400, all right, which comes to over $15,000, all right? And that's just upfront. Boom, all right? And you get this even value for properties of 500 or 50 million or more. So it's a flat fee. A flat fee. I don't care if you're looking for a studio, condo for $75,000, or you're looking at a house in Paradise Valley, up on the hill for $75 million. I'm going to charge you that amount. And strangely enough, that actually came really close to when we were discussing flat fees here. How much I would charge if I had to charge people a flat fee instead. 15 was about what it came out to. And I can justify that on the end. If you want to give me a call, we'll sit down and have a conversation with you. All right. And then the final one, and this is actually when they actively say don't do this one. All right. One-time retainer fee of £2,400 plus 3% of the purchase price payable. Which is actually really sort of close. Now, in my world, I would charge you the retainer fee up front, but then it would be credited against your 3% on the other side. But that's how they do things in England. So, coming soon to an MLS near you. This is getting really, really fun. A whole bunch of people are trying different approaches out there. There was one guy out there that I saw going straight up, I'll only charge you $1,500. Right? I'm pretty sure what he's doing is he's charging you a retainer $1,500, and then on the back end, whatever the seller offers, the buyer's agent. Okay, because remember, it's no longer the seller's agent offering. It is actually now is the seller offering directly to the buyer. Well, not directly, because they came up with some legalese, which I will cover in that video part, if you guys stick around for that. These weird little legalese they came up with to try to make it really seem, oh no, it's really still coming from the listing agent, but it's not really. It's just a pass-through. That's really interesting. So yeah, you could do that all day long, and you guys could probably find him if you did a really quick Google search. Now, I don't know how much time and effort he's going to put in helping you for that flat fee. All right, you might just be getting listings, and he'll be letting you know where every open house is. He might only send you open door offers because he can send you an open door offer, and you can let yourself in. All right, so this is a new normal, and if I got a little hot last week, is because a little hot, but I think as I move through the stages of grief, now I've hit the acceptance. You, the buyer, are screwed. I think we realize that now. The powers that be have decided that this is the way it wants to be. All right, and this is the way things are. So I ask you to do a couple things. You guys all know the first one. All right. The first one is watch your children. Right. Second one is don't drive anything flooded, especially with some of these monsoon rains we've been having this week. All right. I want you guys to work your circle. And then one other one, and this is for the vets in the room. All right. I want you to find a civilian out there who never served and explain to him what a Blue Falcon is. Because everybody really needs to know right now. And with that in mind, you guys have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you guys later. Hi, gang. Thank you for attending this class. Since you couldn't come in and attend it in person, for you guys who are reviewing this thing after attending it in person, as you remember, we suddenly halfway through, a quarter of the way through, realized that the Zoom call wasn't actually recording. So I'm going to hand record this first part that we missed, and then we're going to tack on the part that we did record on the fly onto the back of this, and then we'll be releasing this to all of you guys. So from the top, as you know, changes have happened in the real estate market, and we have these new forms that AAR, Arizona Association of Realtors, has put out for us to use to meet our requirements for the legal settlement that is finalizing this month. It should be done on August 17th. Right? Even though that is not finalized, AR has stolen a march on everybody, and now we have these docs rolled out. We'll be going through them one at a time. And if you have any questions and you're watching this video, feel free to email me or call me up, or either me or Steve or Jessica. Now, I'll let you know, Jessica's probably, of the three of us, probably the most studied on this entire thing. So especially when we get into a lot of the technical details of what do I put in this line, what do I put in this line, talk to Jessica on that, all right? If you have a more overall workflow question, you can contact me or Steve. All right. So these new documents went into effect on August 1st. I'm recording this on August the 5th. If you have sent any offers out or sending any offers out or have any listings, some of these you need to update as soon as you finish doing this, right? This first one that we're going to cover on, that I'm going to do on this recording, is a buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement. After that, we're going to go to the next document, right? And then we'll go on to the live call on that. So, buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement. This is the document that you have with your buyer. And as you have this with your buyer, this is what's going to give you the opportunity to show them houses. One of the changes that have come down the pike on this thing is that a buyer and an agent has to have a buyer-broker agreement between the two of them for you to be able to show that person a house. This is a requirement, right? And as we'll cover later on in the video, there will be fines if they catch you showing houses without one of these documents in place. Now, this first one right here is much the same document that we were working on before. This is one that we've been working with for about a year or two now. All right, there are some changes on this form. The lines that you see in red are the changes to this document, right? And like I said, this is in effect right now. Steve also wanted me to let everybody know that we are going to be requiring that you upload these things into .loop as soon as possible. In fact, you should be generating these out of .loop and hit save. Use a file name on your new loop as the buyer's name. All right, and you'll have this, and you'll have your agency agreement. And then you can start putting any other documents like pre-qual letters and whatnot in there, right? This is something you're going to have signed before you show them the house. This is before you unlock the door. So what we're suggesting you do is you are going to go and talk to them on the phone, meet them in person, and put this document in front of them for them to sign. Now, you can also do this over Zoom and have your entire buyer broker presentation with them on Zoom, and then send these documents over to them as a .loop link for them to sign there. All right, let's start from the beginning. All right, this is your buyer broker exclusive employment agreement. like I said, things in red are what has been changed, right? As you can see, buyers is now considered the buyer, the broker is now considered the broker with the agent. This is like a lot of the other docs that you see is going to be acting through, ProStar Realty is going to be acting through agent's name. All right. So in red, the buyer's broker's exclusive employment agreement is between the buyer and the broker. It is a consideration of the broker's agreement to assist the buyer to locate, to negotiate, and facilitate the purchase of a property. Buyer gives broker the exclusive and irrevocable right to represent buyer in the purchase of a property during the term. Okay? This is your buyer signing on saying that they will only work with you if they buy a house during this time period. If they use another agent to buy a house and you still have an active buyer broker, they can wind up having to pay two different agents this, for that one purchase. That's lines 7 and 8. It's underlined. Like I said, if you ever see capital, bold, underline, this is the contract yelling at you. All right. So the buyer is going to acknowledge that signing more than one buyer broker agreement, right, could make them liable to compensate multiple brokers. Right. This term is going to have a start date. All right, and will expire at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on what the expiration date is. These are negotiable between you and your buyer. All right, now if the buyer decides they don't want to go out for a weekend and they don't know if they like you that much, then you're going to sit there and you're going to say, okay, this document will only cover us for this weekend. All right, now next line we see coming down on here. All right. Locate the property meeting the general description, residential land, commercial, or other, in the following geographical areas. Remember to include what your area is. If they're starting off in Peoria and they only want Peoria, and then all of a sudden they want to look at Glendale, you're going to need to modify this to make sure you're covered in Glendale. Right? I usually just put Maricopa County in there. Right. You're also going to be allowed to negotiate a buyer's discretion at the same terms and conditions for the purchase of the property and assist the buyer in transaction. This is all same boilerplate that we saw in our previous document. It sets forward how we do the agency relationship. Right. And, we use Reedies here. So make sure, like I said, you're going to have them sign the real estate agency disclosure and election form same time they're signing this. All right. Then same lines as before. This is bold to make sure that the buyer understands that if they go into a model home or new home lot or open house, all right, acknowledge that the builder, seller, and seller's broker may refuse to compensate the broker, which could eliminate any credit against the agreed upon broker compensation below. All right. So also a line in here about the real estate buyer advisory, okay, and that they're going to review it. Now, we have an initial point right here. Broker compensation is not set by law nor by any board, association of realtors, multiple listing service, or in any manner other than is fully negotiated between the broker and the buyer in this agreement. This is what the suit was about. Right? They are negotiating right now. Let your buyer know we're negotiating about how much I work for. All right, I'll tell you what I work for. This. Now, underneath that, you do have the option still to get a retainer fee, all right? And it will be a non-refundable retainer, all right? And will be payable within 5 or negotiated amount of days of the execution of this agreement right here, not the contract, all right? And it is earned when paid for initial consultation, research, and other services. This fee shall or shall not be credited against the broker compensation below. Now, one thing I want to point out here, they always use capital for broker compensation, right? This is creating this a term, all right? This is a term of law right now. So we're going to be continuing to reference this as broker compensation, meaning what you've agreed on based off of this document. All right. So broker compensation is a buyer or any entity or owned or controlled by the buyer closes escrow on a transaction for the purchase, exchange, or option of a property. Buyer agrees to compensate broker as follows. This will be called the broker compensation. You can check only one and then you fill in the compensation. Whatever this is, we have the percentage of the full purchase price, we have a dollar amount, or we have other. All right. Not sure what we would put in other on that because usually you're working for a percentage or you're working for that. All right. Broker compensation is going to be in U.S. currency and is paid at the time of, and it is a condition of closing for the purchase or exchange or as otherwise agreed upon in writing. Right? Compensation from the seller or seller's broker. This is how we're used to doing it. A seller's or seller's broker may offer compensation to the broker buyer authorizes the broker to accept compensation from the seller or seller's broker, which shall be credited against the broker compensation. This is the model that we've always used. We have a buyer broker at 2%, seller's offering 2%, everything's good to go. All right. Now let's start watching this part. This is where it gets fun. If a seller or seller's broker offer compensation is greater than the broker compensation, broker shall be paid the broker compensation, and the balance shall be credited to the buyer to the extent allowed by the buyer's lender. What does this mean to you? Before our old buyer broker agreements, you could consider that the floor. All right. You cannot make less than whatever your buyer broker agreement is. What this is doing is this is setting a ceiling. You can't get paid more than what your buyer broker agreement says. So agents out there who think, oh, to make sure I get to work with this buyer, I'm going to go 1%, and because I know we're going to find a 3% house and then I'll get 3%. This line right here is not how that's going to work. If you have a buyer broker for 1%, and even if the seller is offering 3%, that extra 2%, you only get paid 1%. The other 2% are going to go to the buyer. They're going to go down as a credit to the buyer. All right, to the extent allowed by the buyer's lenders. Because remember, right, some loan amounts will only allow so much seller's credit to buyer's costs to happen. All right. Now, if a seller or a seller's broker of compensation is less than the broker compensation, buyer can request the seller to pay the broker compensation as part of an offer to purchase the property. Any broker compensation not paid by seller or seller's broker shall be paid by the buyer. All right. So, same as before. The buyer, if the seller's not bringing enough or offering enough, the buyer's going to have to come out of pocket for that. Notice we have something here in black. Unless modified by VA regulations, VA finance transactions shall be conditioned upon the broker compensation being paid by the seller or seller's broker. One of the problems we have right now is that the VA guidelines do not allow the buyer to pay certain entities, including their own real estate agent. They have currently waived that. All right. In fact, I think they said it would actually go into effect on August 16th, but they have stated that they're going to waive that restriction, so you can still get paid by a veteran. All right. Now, failure to complete. Right. Once an acceptable property is located, buyer agrees to act in good faith to acquire the property and conduct any inspections or investigations of the property that the buyer deems material and/or important. If completion of any transaction is prevented by buyer's breach or with the consent of buyer other than what is provided within the purchase contract, the broker compensation shall be due and payable by buyer. All right. So that's a pretty standard form and stuff like that. We've seen that a lot on the listing side. All right. The seller, you provide a ready, willing, and able buyer to your seller, and they go all the way through, and then you decide, no, I really want to keep the house. We all know you've earned your commission. The buyer's agents earned their commission, and you guys have an actionable tort against the seller. This is now putting the buyer on the same hook. All right. So, after the expiration date of this agreement, buyer agrees to pay broker compensation if within X amount of calendar days. Same thing we've seen before. All right. I usually put 90 in there. Your mileage can vary, but you don't want somebody seeing a house on the last day. Maybe you do that. Hey, we're just going to go out for the weekend and see if you like me. So we're going to sign one of these things, and it's just going to be for the next 2 days. And you find out a day and a half later that they wrote an offer with their sister-in-law on that property. All right. If you put enough calendar days in there to make sure, hey, I showed you that house, you were obligated to work with me in that time period because, all right, it's covered under that. All right. So now the buyer closes escrow on a property pursuant to the purchase contract they executed during the terms of this agreement, or buyer closes escrow on a property which escrow was open during the terms of this agreement. All right. Listings. All right. We're going to show property listings that fit the buyer's criteria regardless of the compensation offered to the broker by the broker or seller's broker, unless instructed otherwise by the buyer in writing. If the buyer says, I will sign for a 2% buyer broker, I don't have any more money, so don't show me a 3, or don't show me anything that's paying less than 2. They need to put that in, give that to you in writing. Ask for that in an email, save the email, print it out in a PDF and upload it to the dot loop on there. We need to have that documentation if this comes down, right? So now the other thing is that the buyer is instructing the broker to negotiate the broker compensation to be paid by the seller or the seller's brokers. These negotiations shall not jeopardize, delay, or interfere with the initiation, processing, or finalization of a transaction. All right? The buyer decides if they do not wish to view property listings unless the seller or seller's brokers have offered adequate compensation to the broker. The buyer must make that instruction to the broker in writing. They call it out a second time and they have it in black. All right? Equal housing opportunity. Okay, remember, broker may not disclose the racial, ethnic, or religious compensation of any neighborhood. All right? You also got some great another release paragraph in here with initials underneath. Right? Basically, it's not our fault. We're used to seeing that, right? So, other thing we need to look at is that we will go to ADR if there is a issue with this thing, all right? After we'll go to mediation. Then, if that doesn't work out, you go to arbitration, all right? You do have the chance to taking it to court, all right? Only after the mediation has gone out. So first you do the mediation, then you have the option to either go to arbitration or go to court. This final paragraph, lines 90 through 93, is that the buyer is going to state that they understand that if there's any claim based on this document or anything else, they are not going to join a class, collective, represented, consolidated proceeding where they get together with a bunch of other people and decide to sue people. So, and then there's an initial on that. So, other thing that there's inseverability on this one. So, invalidity or unenforceability of one or more provisions of this agreement shall not affect any other provisions of this agreement. And then sign. So, a couple things I want to point out on this thing. This is a document that you need to have before you can show a house. Right? The other thing is that this makes you a party to the contract. We'll be seeing this in later videos, or later on in this video. There are now 4 people involved in this deal. There's the buyer, there's the seller, and now listing agent and buyer's agent. It's a 4-way contract now. One's buying a house, one's selling a house. 2 other people are getting paid for helping that transaction happen. The other issue we have along these lines coming up is our consumer base, our potential clients out there. They're really spun up about this. They've been told various things that just are not true, right? You do not need to have this document for an open house. If you are holding an open house, you do not need people to sign one of these documents on the way in. They can still come in, they can still leave. We're going to cover a couple other documents here in a bit. Other thing about this document, this is very much a simple change to an existing document we've already used. Reread this a couple times. I encourage you guys, open up a test file in .loop, pull this thing in, read it for yourself, and then start putting numbers down. So we'll go to the next part right now. Thank you for listening to this part. If you have any questions, give me a call.